afternoon. I would like to thank, first of all, Michelle Maloney for presenting the case of the Great Barrier Reef before this tribunal in order to give the reef some access to justice, and also to the prosecutor for Mother Earth for the excellent way in which he presented and analysed the evidence before us. I find that credible evidence has been presented of the fact that the coal production of the state of Queensland in Australia is will be increased, that there are plans in place to more than double the annual output of coal, that this will result in the dredging of existing ports, which is already occurring, the construction of new coal ports, and very significant increases in shipping across the Great Barrier Reef. And we are satisfied that the claim has been brought on behalf of the reef itself, which, as we have heard, is actually a community of many different beings. There's also an ecosystem of global significance, and the activities that have been described will affect the well-being of an enormous number and diversity of beings who will be negatively affected by this project. Accordingly, there is a good reason for this tribunal to hear this matter because of the very significant nature of its impacts. The presenter has also identified specific parties who are potentially responsible for this. These include the federal government of Australia and the Queensland government, both of whom have regulatory authority over these different aspects of these activities. And also the specific corporations have been identified who are involved in the development of these mega coal mines. The next question to turn to is there a credible threat or damage which would justify this matter being dealt with by the tribunal? We have heard that a report by UNESCO of June 2011 expressed concerns that the Great Barrier Reef may soon have to be listed as a World Heritage Site under threat. This is clear evidence from a reputable organisation of the nature of the threat. We've also heard that the dredging that has already occurred in Gladstone Harbour has released toxins which are already damaging the health of fish and other marine life. We've also heard how the coal that will be exported from this project will contribute to global warming, which in turn will contribute to the acidification of the oceans, which poses a potentially fatal threat to the reef itself in the long term. And we've heard that the fact that there will be more coal ports and increased shipping will significantly increase the risk to the reef. Therefore, there can be no doubt that there is a present and very serious threat to the reef which justifies the attention of this tribunal. I turn now to the question of whether the evidence presented indicates that it is likely that there has been a violation of the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. In order to answer this question, it is first necessary to look at the general context, legal and ethical context established by the Universal Declaration. It establishes a general duty that every human being is responsible for respecting and living in harmony with Mother Earth, and every human being and human public and private institutions have a duty to act in accordance with the rights and obligations recognized in the Declaration. There are also specific duties mentioned in the Universal Declaration that are relevant to this case. For example, it states that states and public and private institutions must establish precautionary and restrictive measures to prevent human activities from causing species extinction, the destruction of ecosystems, or the disruption of ecological cycles. In this case, it is clear that some of the institutions like the federal and state governments were under a duty to establish measures to prevent the destruction of their reef. There is also the duty to ensure that the pursuit of human well-being contributes to the well-being of Mother Earth now and in the future. The evidence presented suggested that the exploitation of these coal reserves would not contribute to the present or future well-being of Mother Earth. There was also specific evidence relating to violation of the following rights: the right to be free from contamination, pollution and toxic or radioactive waste, the right to integral health. We saw, for example, the health of the reef being affected as well as the health of fish and other beings, and the right of every being to well-being. We also heard evidence of the destruction of the reef ecosystem, which is potentially a violation of the right to continue the vital cycles and processes of the reef free from human disruptions. And if we consider the possibility, what may possibly justify any such infringements of the rights, the evidence that this may be justified was not presented. In fact, on the contrary, this damage to the reef is being driven by an increase in coal exports that will contribute directly to the acceleration of climate change and further destruction of ecosystems. So not only is there evidence presented of the failure to comply with the duties in the Universal Declaration and the violation of certain of the rights in the Universal Declaration, but this case also raises important issues for consideration which have potential global significance. For example, the Permanent Tribunal should consider questions such as the following. Since the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is already so great that it is causing significant climate change, is any significant increase in the rate of production of hydrocarbons, such as coal mining, automatically a violation of the rights of nature in Mother Earth? This is a question which this particular case arises and which is important for consideration. Accordingly, my conclusion is that there is a case to answer and that this case must be admitted for consideration by the Permanent Tribunal.